My name is Estefania Alfonso Falcon. People also call me Yes. I lied. I want to move it a tiny bit, but it's good. I drove here from Bradford, where my parents live, so not too far. If you're familiar, I drove like an hour and a half east, fully east. I was expecting to have to go north. I didn't have to go north at all. I didn't know that my family lived that far north, but that's how far north we live, this far north. So that's cool. I grew up there, which is pretty wild. I've never started with this poem before, so I'm going to start with this poem and see where the night goes. Cool. In the third grade, I used to watch comedy specials at night and memorize the jokes so that I could tell them to people the next day at recess. It was my first glimpse at social success. I learned that I could be funny, or at least perform funny. I learned to perform this way, how to put on a show. In the sixth grade, I won the speech contest, and I had 3 friends. I don't know how many friends I wanted to have, but I know it was more than 3. Nobody liked me, but everybody laughed at my jokes. I learned to protect myself this way, keep them laughing, and they might be too busy to corner me in the change room, or egg my house, or chase me with water balloons. Keep them laughing long enough, and they might just leave me alone, stop stealing my shit, tossing my stuff on the bathroom floor, putting me through the fake nice game for so many years that I can't even trust that some of my friends are genuinely interested in me when they ask. I fell in love with comedy like this, for what it can do, for what it did for me. Brain all twisted up circuits and saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. I can't remember if I brushed my teeth this morning, but my comedic timing works just fine. I was a lonely kid. I was afraid that I had nothing to offer people. Now I worry that there's nothing else to me but a show. Like people who love the 1-hour special but forget the comedian's name. I don't want people to forget my name. I loved my 3 friends for loving me, and I am still afraid. Still learning how to tell my friends I love them without making a joke out of it. Still learning to love that kid who got picked on, picked apart in school. Still learning how to be that kid and be scared and still tell people my name and that I want to be their friend. My name is Estefania. People also call me Yes. Please don't forget me. Please be my friend. Thank you. Thank you. A fun fact about me is that I'm never comfortable, so I'm going to adjust this mic between every poem, I think. Not because there doesn't exist a perfect spot for it to be, but because I'm going to change my mind about what that feels like halfway through the thing, but I won't do it halfway through the poem, but you'll see this life. I've been writing a lot this year, which has been new. The last few years I've just written 1 or 2 poems a year, and I have like 7 or 8 new poems, which I'm like working with. Yeah, so that was new, and also the next one is gonna be new, and also like all of them except for 2 are gonna be new, which is, whoa, I did it! I kept writing. They told me it was there on the other side of something, and I believed, and it was here, and now there's poems. So this is a very different ode to joy. This year, I have fallen in love with joy. Easier years have come and gone. In those years, I was consumed by despair and rage, and then I saw the joy, and now it's all that I can see. The way I have always loved ladybugs and how fucking green Turtle Island is, the many incredible and mind-blowing ways that I am loved and in love this year and every year to come. I am joy. I am hungry, and I am joy. I am cold, and I am joy. I am separated from my family by global circumstances, and I am joy. I am borderline, and I am so much joy. In the apocalypse, the greatest gift is love, and love's gift is joy. I have rolled my eyes at people who find beauty in the darkness, those assholes who say Zen is a state of mind or within us or whatever the fuck, but those assholes are joy, and joy is true. I might still roll my eyes, and I am joy. I can feel all of my bones, and I am joy. I can't go home, and I am joy. Joy is my home. Love is my home. The Atlantic is my home. Joy is having something to pass on, an inheritance, a dreamscape. Joy is a second generation of women having access to education, and me, not quite woman, having a college to drop out from. I am finding my joy in the choices my foremothers could not make, did not have. I am finding my joy in living a life in celebration of them. Mis abuelas didn't have the language, but they had the patriarchy. Mis abuelas survived it to birth me. Thank you. I'm feeling very careful about this water that I have near all of the the metaphorical water, I think is what's happening. I'm like surrounded by the metaphor of water, which is not untrue of my life. Like in general, this is cool. It's apt. Thank you, Durham, for an apt space for me. I was born in Cuba. That comes up a lot. I was born in Havana, and I came here when I was 5. So like I didn't make that call, but my parents didn't really either. It was like complicated. It's always really complicated. Sometimes I do entire sets about poems about missing home and how sad that is, and then like white people will come up to me right after and be like, I've been to Cuba 25 times, and I'm like, I haven't. That's a fucked up thing to say to me right now. Like, there was another moment for that piece of information, and it wasn't this one. That seems like, that's uncool, dude. Like, what? Like, you've been going every year for how long? Holy fuck. Okay. Whoa. Whew. Anyway, so this is a poem about that. I've started telling people that they owe me $10 for every time they've been to Cuba. And it's a joke, but it's also not. Because I went 5 years without seeing my primo, and I can't tell you the last time I saw my extended family in El Campo, so when was the last time you went and soaked up my son while I worked over New Year's for time and a half at minimum wage? How many island folks get stuck, landlocked, only ever seeing their homelands in the background of Becky's Instagram pictures, and no shade to you, Becky, except maybe a little. I know the flights are cheap, but so is migrant labor. I've spent years telling Canadians to pay for Cubans to go back home when they're booking their vacations. Just an extra couple flights so I too can see La Playa. One time a friend of mine actually did it and speared a line just in time for me to see my cousin in Havana one last time before he left. Also, he's in Gran Canaria now with so much of my family. The rest of us are in Miami, Tampa, New Haven, Texas, New York, Argentina. Wherever it would take us, we went. There are no Cubans in Cuba anymore. No, mentira. There are more Cubans on the island than off it. Part privilege, part stubborn nationalism, part lack of options. I love my island, but I won't go hungry for it. Or I should say, I can't. And I can't go to jail for it either, and that's what happens to mouthy motherfuckers like me back home. We disappear. And it's not like Canada hasn't made me disappear in so many ways. Shrink to fit into so much paperwork and classrooms with history teachers who love Nixon. And ask me to answer for all the people who've died under communism. And what of all those dead Cubans? How do I answer them? Call their spirits home while I am in someone else's mountains. Y que de mi vistío, my great uncle who killed himself after getting out of those camps. How can I be accountable to the state which lifted so many of my people out of poverty while lining the rest of them up to die and love that land and love those people and answer to that? Canada gave me 140 characters to explain how I can be both a Cuban and a communist and not a murderer, a terrorist. In truth, I am a bad communist. I was born into a mistrust of the state. I have this dream that we are all in community and everyone has what they need, and we are free again to live and love and care for each other as we can. It's not just a dream, a world without prisons or borders or money, where my people are not kept from food or penicillin because of international agreements and embargoes. And is that idea really so dangerous to say out loud? Yes. Thank you. So I'm starting to write in Spanish, which is pretty cool. None of that is happening here for you all. But writing in English has always felt weird. Existing in English has always felt weird. One time I did this set in Calgary, and it was all poems about how sad I was. Like, all of them. They weren't like this. They were like, oh man, being sad is like this. and it feels like sad stuff. And here's another sad metaphor. Here's 20 minutes of sad metaphor. I was in a different place. And then I got off stage and somebody came up to me and was like, this man was like, wow, you are so angry. And I was like, what part of that red is angry? I was just really vulnerable and sad on stage. And it was like maybe a little bit louder than you are when you are vulnerable and sad, but that doesn't mean anger. That's just like what my voice sounds like. And a lot of the time people are like, you're so mad, stop yelling at me. And I'm like, I was just like, yo, what up? But kind of excited from across the room so you could hear me. What do you mean? So this is a poem about that, I guess. I get told often that I am too loud by people who have never had to practice being quiet, regulating, or hiding, never dipped their first language in Canadian honey, never had the sticky syrup slide slowly down their throat to pool in their bellies until they are flowing with so much foreign sweetness, until it pours forth from every surface and pour until they are more Canadian than water, until no one can smell the blood. I get told that I am too loud as I caress eggshells, suck on velvet, let them mispronounce my name for a dozen years or more, and it is never enough to count for quiet. I get told often that I am too loud just sitting here, just being, choking on honey and syrup in this foreign tongue. Thank you. So this is one of my older pieces, which is where the anger lives. I transitioned from being really sad to being really angry to whatever this is. I'm like vaguely exploring joy, but like feeling a little tentative about it. It's like this period of time in poems. I don't know if we'll stay in joy. I hope so. We can only hope. But that's like a lot of work. So anyway, this is a poem about rage. I watered down my rage for so long that it became an ocean. I did it in hopes that someone would finally hear the drowning. I have always been salt water. The salt has always been the most palatable thing about me. They have never had the stomach for my rage. They saw my ocean and mistook it for a backyard pool, took a piss in it and looked on in awe as the water turned red, deep. This ocean has always been blood because it is what the rage comes from. The outpouring of blood on concrete at borders in oceans. They watched us swim to safety and called it an invasion. Called the lifeguards over just to watch us drown. I have been choking on this rage for as long as I can remember. They say this is why they did not hear the cries for help. They say I sound so angry when I am dying. I watered down my rage and they took a pound of flesh anyway, used it as bait, waited for the thirst to kick in and watched all this body be eaten alive by the current. They say our queerness does not exist, that we are binary zeros and ones instead of crashing waves, instead of heartbeat. They say we cannot build a home here or that they will evict us when we do. They say our men do not need to learn to swim. They say this as though they are not the very ones throwing them out into open water, into the Atlantic and all that history. They say our women deserve to drown, or that this is the natural state of things. White boats in a lazy river made of brown skin. 1,000 hearts beating in unison for nothing or for everything or for the sake of beating. They are happiest when it is for the sake of beating. They are happiest coasting on an ocean of blood. They saw this rage and called it too much, tried to swallow its spring water so it would be whole, so we would be less. They called this body of water too much and ran with it as fact, as though there is such a thing as too much water, as though we do not see them all dying of thirst. This rage is not too much, but it will never be enough. This rage is boundless love and falling in love with this body and this heart and this blood, and all the times it has been choking on itself and everyone I've ever loved is drowning. And this rage is an ocean. Thank you. So I got into a fight about capitalism on Twitter the other day because I hate myself and I fight people on Twitter. And this dude was like, oh, never mind, I'm not going to fight with you because I just took a look at your profile and your pronouns are just weird word soup and make no sense. And I was like, really? Because I formatted that pretty well. Like, Twitter doesn't give you a lot of room for bios, and it's hard to have like gender fluid pronouns in a bio. Damn, okay, hater. What's wrong with anyway, what do my pronouns have to do with my analysis of capitalism? Question that I have. Person on Twitter, actually not a lot. Well, actually a ton. Gender's weird. I have a lot of them, so I don't know how to talk about them. And also, like, in English, none of it makes sense. And also, like, none of it makes sense in the first place. Like, they made these things up so that, anyway, I'm not going to give you a gender fucking lecture right now. Oh, it happens sometimes. Is that more water? Thank you. Wow. Well, let me finish it. Anyway, I'm not a girl, and I'm not a boy either. Or like a man or a woman. I'm 25. I get to call myself adult words now, right? That's how it goes. You're all looking at me like, oh, 25. I remember that. Wait, do I? Fuck. It's okay. I don't really remember it either, and I don't know what's going on, and everything hurts. Don't worry. I've been in chronic pain for so long. I can relate. Okay, this is a poem about... Yeah, anyway, it's called Autonomy or Self-Amputation. Every time someone calls me a girl, I peel away a layer of my skin, a serpent's defense. By most afternoons, I am just exposed flesh, slick tendons and vessels the girl slides right off of. The process of self-amputation is called autonomy. Autonomy is shedding or discarding a part of yourself to escape a predator's grasp. Autonomy under the right light is down to bone, click-clack in joints and no flesh to name, only a pelvis to measure for sex characteristics. Some nights my sex is the predator, or at least it is the fiddle, bidding the devil lay waste of my soul. When this body dies, let it be ash. Let no future civilization dig through my burial, find the place I once called home and call it woman again. Let woman slip from the text. Let only yes remain. Only this ghost snake that I am, this rattling free will in a skin suit. Every time someone calls me a girl, I beg my skin fall away. Tear at this body's seams for a way out. Autonomy is knowing that if my breasts continue to endanger my body, they can go. Like my long hair did. Like I shed away summer dresses and cinched waists. Amputation, a slow burn. My skin is safest alone or in the company of people who ask my name when they see me. Let me name this off-bleeding vessel of my humor and joy. Let me bask in its glory and wholeness. A fistful of red jasper blanketed in serpentine. Let it be flesh. Let it be soft and not girl at the same time. Let it be curves and not girl at the same time. Let autonomy mean more than self-defense. Let me cover myself in marigold and rose petals. Rub lavender sugar where the bitter still stings. Let amputation be a thing of the past. Let me be yes. Let me be yes. Let me be yes. Thank you. So I'm crazy, like the kind that they send to doctors and stuff. But doctors are fucked. I don't know if you've heard. And I love being crazy. It's like been super painful, but it's super cool once you get past the super painful parts, right? It's been my experience. Anyway, I've had a rough go at seeing doctors and them trying to explain to me what is happening, especially because a lot of my illnesses are heavily stigmatized ones. It was really hard to even get a diagnosis for some of them because they were like, "Are you sure you want this on paper?" And I was like, yeah, I mean, I need it to get treatment, right? And they were like, yeah, but then people will know and you'll get treated differently and your life will be harder. And I was like, damn, really? I just feel like being sick should always just mean that people are going to support you. Like, oh, I heard you were sick. Is there anything I can do to help you be well? Instead of, anyway, doctors are fucked. This is the psychologist part 1. The psychologist says that I experience a complex constellation of mental health symptoms, a vast universe of inexplicable constellations all twisted up. When I close my eyes, I can see the stars, swirling in the blue-green light, shooting stars and panic attacks, meteorites and suicidal ideation, a ring of nervous stomachs and butterfly comets in orbit. I am stardust, a little bit of everything all mixed up and shining so bright that few can see what the light is made of, what combustion did this. And I name them all after my joy. Hibiscus and daisies, ladybugs and geckos in the stars, honest clusters named impulsive but exciting, and so sensitive that the heart hurts and every hurt hurts, and it is not simple being grounded stardust. Bits and pieces and lots of homes spun into another solar system but twisted up is not ugly. I name my symptoms, but the stars feel smaller, easier to put my finger on, a prism I can touch. Sometimes my own light is so bright that I can't see what it's made of. Sometimes I'm pulling petals from daisies, counting the stars in the sky, waiting to understand the complex constellations of light. Thank you. And the much shorter, The Psychologist Part 2. The psychologist says that I exaggerate my pain as a cry for help. The psychologist has no way of knowing how much pain I am in. That's the end of the poem. I stayed mad about that for 2 weeks when I realized it. I was like, wait a second. How could you even fucking know? How could you know? Like, literally how? Is there a measure for pain? Like, can you put pain on a scale relative to other experiences of pain and then tell me how much pain I'm in right now? Can you tell me that? Or are you just like telling me that I'm exaggerating because you can't fathom that I am in as much pain as I'm in and only asking for this much help? But like, heads up, dude, usually people don't lie about being in excruciating fucking pain. And if they lie, it's because they're in excruciating fucking pain. Like, what the hell? Psychologists. Anyway, this is the last poem I'm going to do for you. It's an old one, and it's my favorite. I'm going to put this on the ground. It's like part of the thing now. Don't tell the artist. Oops. I didn't mean to change the intention of your piece. I just put a cup of water in my poems in the middle of it. So I wrote this poem. I was on Tinder, and this person was like from the Philippines, and she was like, let's talk about that. Do you know about the election that just happened? It was a few years ago. And I was like, no. Do you want to tell me about that? Do you want me to Google it? And she was like, no, I'll tell you about it. So she did, and I was like, cool, great. And then she's like, where are you from? And I was like, oh, I hate that question. But like what you're asking right now is where I was born. I was born in Cuba. And then she was like, oh man, the problem with Cuba is like corporate greed and like private interests, right? And I was like, no. It's like the police state and the embargo and there's a lot going on there that isn't like private interest. Like you're talking about Bay Street. You're not talking about, and I got really mad and I blocked her, and then I wrote this poem that doesn't really have to do with her, but has to do with how mad I get about Cuba sometimes. So that's my life. And it's my last poem for you because it's fun. And I think I have it memorized, but I'm so tired and I have such a cold. And when I have a cold, everything just goes out the window. So I have it here just in case, but we'll see if I can just do it. That would be nice because I'd like to look at y'all. I don't know why I put it on the ground knowing I would need it again. If they wanted us to know our true history, they would have taught it in the first place. They say there are no storytellers left and make parking lots out of performance space. If they wanted us to know our true power, they would not invest so much money in undermining it. If they respected this land, they would not still be mining it, and whose land is it anyway? When native treaties are tunneled, this is why I have to. When native treaties are taken to court by a Canadian company, and Canadian companies tunnel their way through Central America's most vulnerable peoples. Wow, Canada's so convoluted. If they wanted these stories to survive, then they would not work so hard at killing our people, and then people wonder why we can't get paid when the truth comes out of our mouths. Like, who do you think has the money? The last time I went back home, the man on the bus showed us the Canadian oil drills being built. Thank Canada. Thank Canada. Every time I go back home, I wish I could kick y'all the fuck out of my homeland, but I know how economies work. I know when you have so much of another colonizer's history, the English tourists are bound to flock to your shores. I know how beautiful they say the architecture is. I know they say going to Cuba is like going back in time, like a time capsule. Like right after the Spanish forced their enslaved people to build their temples, things just froze there through a revolution and its subsequent enforcement. I know they say my country is beautiful, but this is because they do not hear it screaming. And how could they? With my government's hands on their ears and the sand beneath their feet, how could they possibly know? It's not like all the journalists who tried to tell them went to jail for it. It's not like some of them died trying to get out. It's not like my people don't scream and shout, don't occupy space the second our feet touch foreign shores. It's not like my family would ever have left Cuba if it weren't screaming. But they think I'm here because I love Canada. And why wouldn't they? Don't we all love Canada? Aren't we all just so grateful to be here, so grateful to leave home so we can be foreign somewhere? And isn't that the dream? To be foreign in a country where everyone else can afford to see your country more often than you can? To watch your mother take her engineering degree into a factory because of her woman accent? To have everyone assume you're both cleaning lady and dirty? Dirty like not from here. Like no hablo inglés. Like ignorance must be bliss because the more I know, the more I wish to save my country, but I can't. And I don't know who can, but it sure as fuck isn't Canadian oil, so go. See Varadero and get drunk on our lack of civil liberties, get drunk on our revolutionary status quo and cheap rum because Cuba has bills to pay. But don't you ever try to tell me anything about my history. It is the blood of my blood, the pull that keeps my heart pumping this far north of home. And that story, this story, is not yours to tell. It is a Cuban story, and in it, you are the foreigners. Thank you.